All right, today I'm being joined by conservative entertainer, host of the Chad Prather Show, and gubernatorial candidate in 2022, Chad Prather. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, a little bit of an entertainment background, right? Not usually something people think of when they think about a political candidate. How did this happen?
So about 6 years ago, I was doing a cable television show, and I had a background in radio and some television, and wound up with a television show that was traveling all over the country, and I started doing videos in the cab of my truck, which to me I consider just therapy, right? I was just sitting in traffic, Texas traffic, and I would pop my camera phone up on the dashboard of the truck, start talking to it, and just kind of speak my mind on various topics and cultural issues, and they went viral, so to speak. And one thing led to another. It led to a further life in live entertainment, being able to travel around doing comedy and music and various things, and more television and podcasting. I said back then that I wasn't going to get into political humor. That lasted about 6 weeks. That promised to myself. Then I said I was never going to run for office. That lasted about 5 years. And still had no intention to run for office. I'm as reluctant as they come when it comes to candidacy. But after a while of seeing things that you see and you have a platform and you have a voice, you can only take so much. And so I decided to put my money where my mouth was last year and make a declaration for this primary run in 2022. Definitely been an interesting journey to come at it from the angle of entertainment, but it's also provided a certain perspective that I think a lot of folks don't understand or even catch, and I think it's a good thing.
I mean, you decided to run last year, right? And kind of one of the first to announce that, okay, someone's going to challenge Governor Greg Abbott. I think it should be me. What was the impetus, though, at that
So
time?
I was in South Dakota, July of 2020. I was waiting on President Trump to come in the following day, which would have been July 3rd. I was waiting on him to come in to speak at Mount Rushmore. We were at a dinner there in the Black Hills of South Dakota on July 2nd. Donald Trump Jr. was there, various others, and my news notification came in on the phone that said that there was another mandate, another shutdown in the state of Texas that was issued by Governor Abbott, which means that he was deeming more businesses and more people non-essential. I just kind of had it at that point, and I jokingly say I don't know if it was the glass of wine I was drinking or because I was with a Trump, but I took to Twitter and I said I'm going to run for governor in Texas in 2022. And I went to sleep that night not thinking much of it other than when I woke up, I realized there was a firestorm that had been lit because a lot of people were very frustrated. I saw it as a constitutional infraction. I saw our liberties being trampled. I saw our freedoms being taken away, and it was being done in what I consider a dictatorial manner that was a unilateral decision on the part of this Texas governor. And I thought, why not? You know, I've always been a voice of what I consider to be common sense, albeit wrapped in humor, which I think makes it an easier pill to swallow. And I thought, you know, bare minimum, we can at least hold this administration's feet to the fire. The more we explored it, the more we pursued it, we realized that there was a real opportunity for the voice of the everyman, which is what many people kind of consider me, not having any background in politics other than being in the media side of things, to have a real consideration and shot at this.
And you've been observing politics. How long would you say you've focused, or at least been in tune with state politics in Texas, which can sometimes seem like a whole nother animal?
You know, it can be a whole other animal, and in that regard, you know, I look at Texas as its own country in many, many ways. I look at Texas as almost the way a nation is run, and certainly in terms of our size and our leverage and our population and our economics, we are that. We're on par with many nations in the world. You know, I voted for Greg Abbott 2 times. You know, I was proud to vote for Greg Abbott. I thought that we had a true conservative in Greg Abbott, and I was one of those who lived with that illusion. I lived with that wool over my eyes, so to speak, for a long, long time. And so I've been, you know, being engaged for the last 20 years in some form or fashion, observationally or, you know, in terms of commentary. You know, watching Texas politics has been an interesting jungle to wade through. And I think that we have really watered ourselves down to the point where my phrase that I'm reminding people is, I don't think Texas is the Texas that most Texans think it is anymore.
Right.
And we're at fault for that, right? I think that ultimately Texas is the master of its own destiny. It certainly has the ability to do that. But we're choosing to not do that. We're foregoing a lot of our own responsibilities and a lot of the power that we carry as such a large state. We're letting the federal government rule and reign over us, and we're just following suit.
Why do you think that's happened? What's led to that?
Well, I think on a simple terms, we've been bought out in many ways. I think we are adhering to big government. We're adhering to big tech, big media. We're following the pablum that is being, pushed out there by the narratives of this woke culture. We have what I believe to be an opinion poll governor, and we're playing opinion poll politics. We're trying to see what people are going to approve of in order to maintain a re-election status. And for whatever reason, it never makes sense to me that people will spend tens of millions of dollars in an election to become a governor of a state to get paid $153,000 a year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more obviously at play in regards to that. That power is hypnotic, it becomes covetous, and we see these men and women both on the federal level and the state level who are groomed for these positions for years and years, and it becomes sort of the good old boy club that it's the next person to take that role. Yep. And then it's a stepping stone to get to the next one. So when you're doing that, when you're focused on that next role and that next goal of the election process, I think the priorities get lost in the shuffle. What we're seeing is the result of those lost priorities.
What have you, we talked before we started recording here about you've been traveling the state, you've been meeting a lot of folks, just like everybody kind of on the campaign trail gets the opportunity to do. What has that been like as far as what you're hearing from folks about what they want to see the state looking like going forward?
Well, first of all, I'm more highly motivated today than I am at any time. More so than I have been, even when we announced, when we got going. I'm so motivated, and I'm motivated because I'm seeing the fire and passion that's in the hearts and in the eyes and the spirit of these Texans that I'm encountering across the state. We made it a goal to get into all 254 counties in the state in this process. We've been to quite a few more to go. And what we're doing is we're catching the same harmonic resonance, right? We're these people who have caught the spirit of Texas, because I believe Texas is a spirit. It's more than a geography. It's more than a zip code. It's more than an area code. And it's more than real estate. It's a spirit. You either get it or you don't. I believe it's caught, it's not taught. And most people learn Texas at their mother's knee, and their dying breath is Texan when they go to be with their Creator. I came by Texas 20 years ago from the state of Georgia. As a pro-life guy that believes life begins at conception, I was conceived in Texas. So I at least have Texas DNA running in my blood, right? I am seminally a Texan and proud to be so. But when I came to Texas 21 years ago, I realized that there was something greater at play here. There's a spirit here. I said to a good friend of mine on a hunting trip 25 years ago, I said, the funny thing about you Texans is you guys would rather be Texans than Americans. He said, don't push it. and I've realized that as I've crossed the state, I've been reinvigorated by the passion of people who want to see Texas be great again. Not one amongst its 49 state sisters, but the one, the most important one, not one that ranks in its 40s in terms of healthcare and opportunity and education, but is number one. And with the size and power that we have in this state, there's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be ranked among the elite in the United States of how things need to be done. But the numbers bear up. Statistically, we're just simply not there. That's discouraging. Something has to be done about that. And people are disgruntled, they're dismayed, but the spirit of Texas remains strong.
Being an entertainer, being someone who has a platform on the Blaze and has a show and does shows, obviously it comes with the advantage of getting exposure from that. On the other hand, a lot of hours of footage. Folks can maybe find some colorful statements, right? Maybe some more lewd things. How do you think that plays in 2021 in politics?
If it does, it does. I'm unapologetic. I've built a brand off of being unapologetic. One of my first viral videos was a video called Unapologetically Southern. I had someone the other day who came to me at an event, wanted me to apologize publicly for some statements that I'd made in the past, and I unequivocally said no. I don't apologize for things that I've said. I admit when I put my foot in my mouth, but I'm not going to apologize because let's face it, we're all humans. So people ask me, Glenn Beck asked me, he said, what about the skeletons in your closet? I said, well, there's no real closet, right? The skeletons are kind of like Halloween decorations on the front yard. We just put candy bars in their laps and people can take them as they want. We do live in a different political climate in 2021. I think Trump exposed that in a big way. We have a lot of odd personalities, strong personalities that are running in state governments. You know, we've seen everything from Larry Elder and Caitlyn Jenner in California to now Herschel Walker running for Senate in Georgia. You know, so we have some folks from various backgrounds. I've lived a wild and crazy life in the world of entertainment. There's no question about that. And one of the fortunate things that I'm able to do by having the platform that I have is unapologetically just own it. Some things I'm proud of, some things I'm not so proud of, but at the end of the day, it's who I am. I'm a human being. And I think that by and large, the average person out there is tired of seeing a buttoned up, suited politician who claims to be perfect when everybody knows they're not. You know, I go back to the old Ross Perot debate when he was with George H.W. Bush and with Bill Clinton, and he said, "No, I don't have experience running up debt. I don't have experience, you know, running economies in the ground and doing these things." He said, "But what I do have experience is you know, building successful businesses and doing these various enterprises." And that's the way I look at it. I've done it my way, to use the verbiage of the song. You know, I'm not Frank Sinatra, but I've done it my way, and I've enjoyed some success with it. And I think that translates into results. And I think that's where people are right now. They're willing to take that. I don't want to compare myself to that pagan King Cyrus, but yes, you know, that's
a comparison.
What a comparison! But the one who says, "Hey, come hell or high water, it's time to get some things done," and that's the beauty of where I'm at. I'm not bought out. I don't mind being politically incorrect. In fact, it's a conviction of mine that you can't solve a complex problem and still be politically correct. And it's okay. I think political correctness and this dominance of making certain language or words illegal, you know, quite honestly, it's demonic at best. It's a horrible thing to do to our culture, and especially at the government level, and when we're trying to save not only a union but a state. So I don't apologize for those things. I'm proud of my experiences and the things that I think we bring to the table. But at the end of the day, you know, they're tried and true practices that have brought success, and I think we could do that on the state level as well.
You've invoked him as some inspiration a couple of times here so far. Why do you think it is that President Trump endorsed Greg Abbott back in June?
Well, I don't think he had a choice. I think he had to live up to his word, and his word was that he was going to endorse any Republican incumbent that was sitting in an office. We know the pretty rough endorsements over the years. Donald Trump endorsed Mitt Romney. You know, he appointed Jeff Sessions, and the list goes on, the various people that we could say that Trump didn't have the best human judgment when it came to judging humans. I think that he had to do that. And I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump wants what's best for Texas. And I think somewhere inside of his mind, he thinks that upsetting the apple cart is going to be the worst thing for Texas. But you know, to that point, I think most Texans disagree with that sentiment. They can love Trump and still disagree with that sentiment. And one of the things that I appeal to is when Donald Trump spoke at CPAC a few weeks ago, and he spoke for a very lengthy period of time. Never at any time did he mention Greg Abbott in that CPAC speech, and he was doing it from Dallas, Texas. You would think if he truly endorsed Greg Abbott, believed in what Abbott was doing here in the state, that he would at least promote and push him. But there was a large contingency of the Abbott out crowd there, and Trump's smart enough to read the room. And I think when you do that, your actions are far louder than your words. So I see the endorsement. I understand the endorsement. I think at the end of the day, I think when it comes down to it, Donald Trump is going to endorse Texas over any one man or woman.
Talk a little bit about policy, what you would do if you were governor. You said kind of one of the big reasons you ran, decided to jump into this race was the mandates coming out of COVID from last year with the governor. If you were governor back then in March 2020 and the Chinese coronavirus is, you know, starting to sweep through, what would your response have looked like?
Well, a lot of people say it's easy to look back now and be an armchair quarterback. The way I look at it is, while I don't know everything about the scientific data coming out of the CDC, and neither does anyone else, quite frankly, I do know what the Constitution says. And I've read the Constitution, both the state and the U.S. Constitution. And what I believe I would have done is I would have come to the people of Texas and I would have said, you know, we've been through crisis before. We're facing one that we don't really understand or know what we're up against. But you're Texans and you're free, and I believe you take care of your neighbors and you're responsible with that freedom. So let's do the best thing. If you want to shut down your businesses, do that. Your churches, do that. If you need to close up shop for a little while, if you need to distance from one another, set certain policies for your businesses. If you don't want to go to work, if you need to stay at home, you need to feel like you need to quarantine yourself. You do what's in the best interest for you, your household, your family. But at the end of the day, I believe that as Texans, you're still free and you will make the decisions you need to make. I don't believe the Constitution was written to keep us healthy or to keep us safe. It was written to keep us free. And when you try to do so, when you take people's freedoms, you are violating the Constitution. And he did that in numerous ways through last year. So you can look back at Hurricane Harvey. When Hurricane Harvey hit, we didn't have to be mandated to load our trucks up and take supplies south and start helping our neighbors. I took numerous truckloads of stuff to Southeast Texas, Mauriceville, Orange, those areas east of Houston. I felt Houston was getting a lot of attention. Nobody mandated that we do that. We just did it because we're Texans, we love our neighbors, and we take care of each other.
Now you even see that still, I mean, it's a year and a half later after this, and you still have some schools, for example, putting in mask mandates for children, some local officials still wanting to go out. And yet we see that the state legislature in Austin, which is a Republican-led state legislature, has still not put into place any sort of restrictions from stopping that happen in the future, any sort of emergency power reforms or any bans on mandates, mask mandates and the like. If you're governor, I mean, you can't control, I suppose, what they do, but I mean, how do you navigate that when you've got a state legislature that doesn't seem to want to pass it?
Well, what you have to remember that tyranny, once you give it power, it doesn't just give it back freely. We've made little tyrants out of a lot of folks, whether it's the local school boards, city councils, these elected judges, various municipal officials, superintendents, principals, teachers. We've made little tyrants out of a lot of people. And while we can't stop people from usurping power and abusing it even, we can make that harder to do. And that starts at the top. We've got to make it harder for people to abuse the power that they have. And when I say power, they really shouldn't have power anyway. They are elected representatives. They're there to serve the people. They should make sure that the people's best interest is at heart, and ultimately freedom is in our best interest. So we need to make that harder to happen because, let's face it, we're seeing a lot of stuff going on, and it started with the unilateral decision that was not advised on the basis of legislation by our governor, Greg Abbott. And the rest are just following suit.
We're seeing even now, it's not just local officials, but you've got the federal government. You've got President Joe Biden putting out his federal mask mandate for federal workers. You've seen the National Guard, Texas National Guard is being told they need to get the COVID vaccine. Is that something you would stand up against as governor?
So, politics runs downstream of culture. We're in a cultural battle. One of the things we have to do is we have to take back our culture. We have to take back we're engaged in a cultural fight. And when I say that, the CDC came out just recently and said that now they're going to look at the problems in the health threats that are being delivered by gun ownership. Okay, so they're using the same verbiage they used to crack down and create mandates for coronavirus. Now they're doing it with the Second Amendment. So we can start to see that cultural agenda that's taking place. They've created this phenomena of reigning over people in tyranny. So to that degree, yes, we've got to fight back. We've got to make sure that Texas remains a sovereign state, that we control not only our borders, but we control our laws, we control our destiny and our direction. The governor has the ability to do that. We've got to stand strong. At some point in time, somebody has got to stand up to the federal government, hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire, realize that we're being ruled by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. This isn't elected representatives anymore. These are appointees that are determining our future. And right now we have a future that's untenable. So constitutionally, the governor has a lot of power to make sure that his state stays great, gets great, stays great. And he's the shepherd of the people of this state. And it's his responsibility to keep those folks safe.
Last question on that topic. Governor Abbott has said that employers can mandate vaccines. You've seen some other states where governors have said that. What are your thoughts on employer mandates?
I want people to be able to have the freedom to run their businesses freely, however they want to do it. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the violation of people's human bodies. There's got to be a line drawn in the sand that says you can't mandate that. You can't make that happen. I mean, if you applied that to other aspects of employment, like let's say a male boss came to a female employee and said, hey, I'm allowed to violate your body. If I don't violate your body, you can't keep your job. Well, we're not talking about that because people in shock and horror would recoil and say, well, of course businesses aren't allowed to do that. That's illegal. Well, it's also illegal to violate somebody's body with a syringe or a medical solution or a chemical solution that we don't know the results of. So these are the kind of things that are getting farcical in terms of what we're calling freedom. That's not freedom, that's coercion.
Another issue that's been really, really big in the news lately, really since the beginning of the year, is the growing invasion on our southern border. We've seen spikes of thousands and thousands of illegal aliens crossing the border. And so far, it looks like the governor now is hesitant to deploy the National Guard fully down there to stop it. What would you do if you were governor in an attempt to stop and push back on this?
Well, the simple answers are this. I'll give you the simple answers and the right answers, and then we'll get into the controversial answers. First of all, deploy the National Guard in its full force. Deploy the Department of Public Safety in its full force, both material and human resources. Do everything we can to back those federal agents, those border agents and ICE agents that are there. They're not under our control, but at the end of the day, we can support their efforts and help hold their hands up. Enforce the laws that are on the books. Make sure that those are being kept, that they are being enforced. I keep saying we've got to detect, we've got to deter, we've got to detain, we've got to deport, and at all costs defend. And that's one of those things where I think we get into a very controversial, but also a very constitutional word, and that's the word militia. We have got to enable the citizens of Texas to protect their lands, protect their borders, protect their properties, and make that a thing where it is an understood deal. We're in Texas, and we're not going to put up with invasion. This is a constitutional right that the governor has, that in the case of an invasion, when the federal government doesn't defend the state, we have the right to defend our own. This is something that our founding fathers are probably rolling over in their graves because, we won an American Revolution with men with muskets who made hats out of squirrels hiding behind trees. And now we're literally being invaded. We've already seen 15,000 Haitians come through. We're probably seeing another 40 to 50,000. Maybe I've heard estimates of 80,000 more on the way from various places. Val Verde County, that's a stretch of 120 miles, has apprehended over 84 nationalities that are represented this year alone. We've got to do at all costs. We've got to stand on that river, both as law enforcement, both as a sovereign state, as an empowered people, and say, no, you're not coming across. Absolutely, you're not coming across. When those border agents were being accused the other week, let me tell you, as governor of Texas, I would have been the first guy down there on horseback, representing those border agents, saying, if you're going to accuse them, then you're going to accuse me. If you're going to pull them off the border, then you got to pull me off the border. This is the kind of thing that I think we've got to stand up to the federal government. You stop that package from coming across. And when I talk about packages, I'm talking about human trafficking. I'm talking about organ harvesting. I'm talking about drug trafficking. I'm talking about sex smuggling, children smuggling. We stop that. That reverberates within 24 hours in two places. It carries all the way to the cartels as far as Costa Rica, and then it rings the phones in Washington, D.C., and they're going to say, what's going on? South of the border, they're going to say, my package isn't getting through, and in Washington, D.C., they're going to say, what are you doing? We're going to answer with, we're doing our jobs, and that's what we're here to do, and there's nobody that's going to stop us from doing it.
Some family issues that have been left unaddressed after this past legislative session. You've got gender modification in children, right? Which is really it's kind of child abuse is what it is. Governor Abbott has said not going to put it on a call for a special session because he thinks there's zero chance it'll pass the Texas House. If you were governor right now, would that be on the special session agenda?
100%. It would have been in the main session back in June. This is something that absolutely cannot happen. To the degree that we fail to defend the most innocent among us, whether it is the children in our society or the unborn in our wombs. To the degree we do that, I think we lose both the grace and protection and the divine providence of God's hand on our state and our nation. We've consistently avoided these controversial issues, but it's also easy to avoid when you have a governor who is pretty much on record receiving campaign funds from these clinics that specialize in that type of modification. This is big business at this point in the state of Texas. We're seeing politicians that are bought and paid for. We have folks that have sold out to big tech, multinational corporations, and various other industries that are out there, not the least of which is what I call medical tyrants, such as these gender modification clinics. And it's got to be enough. Somebody's got to say, enough is enough. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, how do we know you won't be bought out? I said, I'm having too much fun being politically incorrect. I don't want to be bought out. I'd rather run a grassroots campaign, which is politispeak for being broke, than to be sold out, because I know at the end of the day, this isn't something I had to do. This is not a job that I'm looking for. This is not an escalation of popularity or public opinion that I care about. This is something that's a conviction. This is a fire in my soul for this great state. And we've got to fight for the families of this state. Mm-hmm. Come hell or high water, Brandon. No matter what happens, I'll be the first one to go to the penitentiary over this. We've got to protect our children.
Heartbeat Act, which prevents abortions before a heartbeat's detected, usually about 6 weeks or so, has come under siege, right?
Sure.
From Democrats and from the federal government right now as that moves through the court. You said you were pro-life earlier. That could mean a lot of different things. What does that mean to you?
So whenever a male seed fertilizes a female egg, the DNA of a human being is immediately imprinted on that person, and that DNA is there for the rest of their life. If we were to discover that on, say, Mars, we would spend tens of trillions of dollars trying to protect that life, but yet it is something that is considered invalid and not important here on Earth for some reason. For me, the heartbeat bill is a step in the right direction, but I believe in the abolition of abortion. As controversial as that may sound, I don't believe that calling it abortion cleans up the act of murder in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think that we can continue to expect God's blessing or providence in our future if we continue to defend such a thing. And I've heard all the arguments, everything from the rape or the back alley things. Look, the guilt of murder on top of the ignominy of rape doesn't help a woman. You say back alley abortions. Let's call them what they are, back alley murders. Just because you do it in a sterile clinic doesn't make it right. Mm-hmm. That's my conviction. I don't expect everybody to agree with me on that, nor do I really care in that regard. At the end of the day, I stand before God without anybody else. And I believe protection of that innocent life is what's most important.
So abolition, no exceptions.
100%.
Okay. Texas has the dubious distinction right now of being one of the states with the highest property tax rates. I think people who've seen over the past decade or so have seen their property tax bills skyrocket, even though we've seen lawmakers say, we've done some property tax reform, people's bills still continue to go up and up. What needs to be done?
So property tax does need to be abolished. It does need to go away. I have no doubt about that. It's done nothing but go higher, skyrocketing higher since Greg Abbott has been in office. It needs to go away. But anybody that sits in this chair and tells you that they have a definitive plan over the next several years and they can quote off their statistics of what they would do and say that they have the definitive answer is not telling you the truth. This thing has grown into the state of Texas. This property tax has become a tumor on a vital organ. And you wouldn't want a surgeon to walk in to do brain surgery on your child with a nonchalant attitude about statistics and percentages. This is very, very important. But at the end of the day, it starts at the top. We've got to cut spending. Spending in the state of Texas has increased by $48 billion in the last 2 terms of Greg Abbott. That's untenable. We've demonstrated at the top that spending is okay, and of course the municipalities and the counties are going to do that. There's ways to cut. There's ways to increase certain things. I think we maintain a legacy of no state income tax, but there's ways to pay what we're using this property tax for. It's a complex issue that's going to take complex minds to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, it is also a conviction of mine. Hey, look, I'm a biblical guy. I believe the Bible. Don't always live it, right? You try, you don't always live it, but you believe it. And when God promised the land to his people in the Old Testament, he said it's not going to be taxed because the land was the promise. These days, we've got 7th generation ranchers wanting to pass their land on to their children, and that promise is being taken from them because they can't afford the property taxes, and by and large, we're disinheriting the next generation of Texans, and that's unfortunate.
Speaking of money, Governor Greg Abbott, incumbent, has been there for 2 terms now. got a war chest of tens of millions of dollars. How do you compete with that?
Well, you don't on that level, quite honestly. I tell everybody, I say, look, you could have a telephone, you can have telethons, you can have television. I believe in teleperson. That is the biggest grassroots way. That's one of the reasons why we're going to all the counties across the state. We're talking to folks out there that maybe aren't so populated areas, but that's okay. They're just as important. What I remind people is that when Greg Abbott raised $18.7 million in the 10 days following the initial general session, that's not mom and pop money. That's not $5 here and $10 here. That's not people breaking the piggy bank. This is major donors. This is multinational corporations, as I said earlier. This is big tech. This is Silicon Valley. People need to see what they're up against in this. So no matter what he spends, and I hope he spends every dime of it, fuel the Texas economy, okay? I hope he spends every dime of it. But at the end of the day, that doesn't represent the blue-collar, hardworking person, the average Texan who keeps their head above water 6 days a week, worships on Sunday, and then gets up and does it all over again. That's not representing them. 1773, they had a Boston Tea Party for taxation without representation. The tyranny had grown way past the people it supposedly protected and served. And so they went to Boston Harbor. I think it's time we have an Austin Tea Party. It's time to realize that we're not being represented in Austin anymore. The state's being controlled by El Paso, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth, Tarrant County, and ultimately Austin. Somebody asked me in an interview recently, they said, if you get to Austin, do you think you'll be able to handle it since Austin's not like the rest of Texas? And I said, that's the problem right there. Austin's not like Texas. It's time to make a change on that.
You're joined in this race by a few other folks also looking at challenging Governor Abbott. Potentially more could enter before the filing deadline. Are you happy to have him in the race?
Some of them, yes. I've been talking to Alan West for a long time. I'm trying to help that guy out. I'm trying to get him some popularity, trying to get him a little more well-known, some face recognition. No, I always say it, and Don Huffines as well, such a good sport, and I've known those guys for a long time, and they're good friends. And what I say is I'm not running against them, I'm running alongside them. So my philosophy has become ABA, anyone but Abbott. Of course, if Abbott winds up the guy and he's running against a Robert Francis O'Rourke, we're going to vote for Greg Abbott, right? But in this primary election, if my friend Don Huffines enters into a runoff, let's say, with Greg Abbott, then I'm going to throw and marshal my full support behind a Don Huffines. That's the goal, and that's the beauty of primary elections. They're a great thing for politics, especially on the state level, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch in this one.
We still got a long ways to go until that primary election date, whenever that gets set. But how can folks right now follow what you're doing on the campaign trail?
Well, I encourage people to go to our website and check it out. It's ever evolving, both with the policy as we're formulating these things and communicating these things. But check it out at Prather2022.com. Sign up on the email. We're not blurbing you every day, trying to just remind you that we're campaigning. We're actually sending out important information that Texans need to know about their state, what's happening in this legislative session, what's happening across the board. So Prather2022.com. If you're feeling frisky, go to Beto22.com. Still comes to me. You could even go to AbbottOut.com. It still comes to me. So we're having fun with this thing because I think at the end of the day, why not? We should, right? Let's make politics boring again, and let's get politics out of our lives.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brendan. Appreciate you.
Thank you.